Welcome, happy Friday to all of our webcast attendees around the world today. I'm Doug Kennedy from Kennedy Training Network, if you're joining us for the first time. But I see a lot of repeat attendees. Julia, our marketing coordinator, and I love to go through the list as we're getting ready. What's going on?
Waiting to screen.
Okay, I'm checking on some technical issues here.
Okay, see you now.
Okay, thank you. My assistant is here checking on me. But we have webcast attendees from around the world. I see a lot of regulars coming back to join us. So thank you for everyone. Or if you're going to be watching us, I know a lot of you do watch the replays. We have a lot of our KTN clients, Jim Holiday, Beaver Run. I can't wait to visit that resort again. It's been about 15 years, but I'll be back there in Breckenridge, Colorado. Let's see, we have Melanie from Mill Pond. Thank you for joining us with your team. Embassy Suites Orlando North. I was just there doing some sales training for you. And we have Catherine joining us. We have a lot of our clients over the years in Outer Banks. I see Outer Banks Blue, Resort Realty here. And in the vacation rental business, Emerald Isle, Jessica, and a whole bunch of others. Atlantic Realty, Daniel, some others from you. Moose Management, we hope you'll be a client very soon out in Park City, Utah. Lucky Savannah, Amy, we have Diamond Destin, Austin, quite a few of you here as well. I know we've been in touch recently. We have international attendees. We have Belize is represented today by Florio Hospitality. Karen, hello to you. Africa, we have a new participant in Africa. We have a couple today. Let's do a special shout out for Duncan from Tarako Luxury Tours. We have the Parkside Hotel in Kyiv, Ukraine. Valerie, thank you for joining us. I know you have a lot going on in Kyiv, and our hearts go out to you every day. Thank you for joining us again. We have management companies, McNeil Hotels, Jennifer, thank you for joining us. Rosewood Hotels, Gabriella, a training manager. Rosewood has some of the world's most luxurious properties, so it's an honor to have you. We have a lot of new participants today. We have Megan from the Nautical, which I checked out, interesting resort out in California. The Ossoff Resort, looks like that's up in Wisconsin. Aaliyah, thank you. Pasea, interesting. Alexis, thank you. I think you just sent me something to sign yesterday. Arctic Club Seattle, Sharon, thank you for joining us. We have 3 resorts in Dominican Republic. Now I'm going to DR in December, but I'm not training any of you. So if you want to have Doug come to your resort while I'm there, reach out to me. But Viva, Wyndham, Patricia, thank you. Secrets Copacabana, I've stayed at 2 Secrets, but they were in Mexico. Elvira, thank you for joining us. We have Grand Palladium, Jose. For Canada, a lot of Canadian clients and friends. We have Courtyard Edmonton, Vera, and then of course 2 of our loyal webcast attendees who are also training clients from Fantasyland Hotel in Edmonton, Rihanna and Hazelton. Grace, we hope to see you again in 2025 for some on-site training. And to finish us out here, we have many clients joining us today from Mexico. We have Nizuk, I'll be seeing all of you in about 3 weeks in early December. And a couple of new ones here. We have the Vedanta World Amusement Park in Cancun. Alejandro, interesting. I'm actually going to be doing my first vacation in Cancun in early January, so might have to come and visit you. I'm going to check out Vedanta World and then Runabout, Barbara. So thank you for joining us. We'd like to do our shout outs here to welcome everybody, also to give our last minute joiners a chance to come on, but shout outs to everyone and thank you again for making time for us. Our topic today, this is based on an article I wrote a few months back, one of my monthly training articles. Now, by the way, if you do want to follow us on LinkedIn, you can either follow Kennedy Training Network or Doug Kennedy, and you'll always see my articles as they post. They're all kind of a train the trainer format that I do. But this particular one got a lot of respondents, so I thought let's make it into the topic for here in November for our live webcast. Customer hospitality is bigger than guest service. Now, a few themes here. If you're joining me for the first time, this is new, but some of you do hear me kind of revisit the same things. I love to talk about the difference between hospitality and guest service, but I want to do something a little bit new today. I want to talk about the hospitality industry as compared to the job of hospitality. So the hospitality industry is a word that encompasses many different factors of different industries and businesses in the tourism world. But sometimes it might be restaurants, sometimes it might be tours, sometimes it might be attractions. Of course, it might be hotels, resorts, conference centers, vacation home rental, property rental companies. All of this is the hospitality industry, and you can actually get a degree in the hospitality industry. And so here's what Google tells us about that. Again, all the different things that we talked about here. I forgot to mention recreation and also event planning. Now, the job of hospitality is very different. So I'm going to give a couple of shout outs here. I often refer to my personal mentor, the late Howard Fartag. Now, Howard, I met when I was first starting my first company 35 years ago when he worked in the industry. And not long after, he became a professor, an adjunct professor at Virginia Tech. Now, I know that I have referenced him in the past, but I want to actually give a quote. I'm going to encourage you all to look this up. Howard received a very amazing award recognition especially for an adjunct professor. Now, an adjunct professor in the university environment, academic world, is someone who typically does not have a doctorate or even a master's. They're kind of a person typically with a lot of experience. Now, sometimes they might have a doctorate or a master, but they're not a tenured professor, and they typically bring experience from the real world. It is very rare for someone to keep that role in fact, he did that job for over 30 years. And he did it so well that they named the Hospitality and Tourism Department at Virginia Tech after Howard. And you can see a picture here of Howard at his awards gala where they recognized him. At the time, he was, I think, 89 years old. He taught all the way to age 93, by the way. If you search up on YouTube the Howard Fartag gala speech, and then go to the 6-minute mark, you will hear what I think is one of the most simple yet profound definitions of hospitality, which is simply making people feel good. And you'll be able to tell from his remarks that they were not prepared. It was based on a conversation he had earlier in the day while relaxing at the pool, talking to a bellman, who had just started in the industry. Now, another thing that we get a lot of comments on when I teach these classes on site, in-house, at different locations around the world, when we have people define what is hospitality and what is guest service, it comes down to, again, this word feeling. And very often people quote the poet laureate, the Maya Angelou, who a lot of people know also from the book, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. You might also recognize her from giving the poet laureate at when President Clinton was inaugurated. But her famous quote, I have learned that people will forget what you said, but they will never forget what it was I've learned that people will forget what you said, they will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So to me, hospitality is a feeling. It is actually a mutual shared feeling that affects both the giver and it affects the receiver. So I use an example a lot of times in my on-site training. Imagine yourself at your house now, and you're getting ready to have someone come over to visit, and let's say it's your day off, maybe on Saturday, but if you work in the hospitality industry, it may actually not be a weekend, especially during peak season, you might be working weekends, but let's pretend, it's a Saturday and you're relaxed and you have a special friend coming over. You probably cooked a special meal. You probably prepared a special drink. I'm pretty sure you did a lot of cleaning as well. And let's say they're coming over at 6 p.m. and it's 5:30. Hopefully you're prepared and not frantically, vacuuming and dusting at the last minute. And then it's 5:45, and then it's 5:55. And they text you and say, my Uber's about to pull up. and you go to that front door, you hear a car door out front, you approach the front door. How do you feel? You're excited, right? Your heart is racing a little bit. You feel that warm, fuzzy feeling. What's going on the other side of the door? They're giving their Uber driver 5 stars, hopefully, and a tip. And they're all excited and their heart is racing and they're about to knock, but you're already about to open, and you open the door. And at that moment, you both share, depending on how you feel, hugs, kiss, maybe a kiss on both cheeks. That's what you get if you're greeted at my house. But it is a mutual shared feeling. And at that moment, you're actually feeling the vibe of hospitality. Now, we in Western cultures don't have a word for this. I often tell the story. In fact, I'm going to refer back to a previous webcast we did. And if you're a student of what we're teaching here, you can go to our YouTube channel, which I'll show at the end, and you can find a webcast on the topic of kama mutta, okay? And if you happen to read Sanskrit, you can actually interpret this probably more directly. It's loosely interpreted as the word kama mutta, which means being moved by love. So go back and reference that, or if you're a hospitality trainer or a manager, you want to pull that one and share it with your team as well. But it's basically that warm, fuzzy feeling, okay? And I think kama mutta is a little more fancy way to say it. Now, guest service versus hospitality. Well, you, the boss here, this guy looks like a bossy boss. He's got his whole crew lined up, fancy hotel. They're all there, what they call morning lineup or pre-shift lineup or pre-shift huddle. Some people call it the stand-up meeting. And he's going over the standards. He's reading the rules. You can mandate things like guest service. You can mandate a guest service script, okay? But you definitely cannot mandate hospitality. You cannot force someone to make someone else feel the vibe of hospitality. You actually have to nurture it, water it, fertilize it. It has to be organically grown in order to be authentically delivered. Because if not, what you get is rigid scripting. Good afternoon, how are you? Welcome. How's your trip been? Good, that's good. Good to see you. How was your stay? Good, that's good. Have a safe trip home. Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Kennedy. You can fake guest service and you can force guest service and you can actually measure it. You can stand there and audit people. Heck, today you could probably put some kind of monitor and have an AI chatbot evaluate, did they use every guest name 3 times? And I'm sure you can record all that and, you know, have it monitored on a checklist and deliver it in some kind of fancy report with a graph in today's world. But you cannot mandate hospitality. In fact, it's really hard to measure too. You can look at the effects though, and we're going to be talking about that. And we actually touched on that in previous recent webcasts that I did about the effects of hospitality on online reviews. We're going to address that again in January, the impact of reviews. So you can measure it kind of by the result of how people feel about the hotel and about the stay. But it has to be grown organically. Now, I don't know if the title caught your attention or maybe you're just one of our loyal webcast attendees. Maybe this is your first time, but you may be wondering, customer hospitality, you know, typically in the hotel business, we call our customers guests. But I wanted to back up and talk about all of the customers that we want to deliver hospitality to, because it's more than just our guests. Now, first of all and foremost, many actual customers, a customer implies someone who has an economic relationship with the business. They buy something and they pay in exchange for receiving something. When you think about it, many of our actual customers are the most economically important buyers we have, but they never actually stay with us. For example, if you're a luxury hotel, you know, a lot of guests still use travel agents. Many people think travel agents went the way of a flip phone or, you know, an actual phone call made from a phone hardwired to a wall. But many of our actual travel agents, the #1 users are ultra luxury hotels for the uber wealthy, also adventure hotels. So our friends down in Africa, also a lot of our international people that we shouted out, Caribbean, Belize, a lot of people that travel internationally use a traditional travel agent. Meeting and event planners. Today, a lot of meeting and event planners do it professionally. They're third-party planners. And because of the virtual world we live in, they no longer have to come for a site inspection. You know, they can actually, we've talked about this on our hotel sales training webcast. They can use a GoPro camera. The salesperson can use a GoPro camera and actually walk them on a site tour. Of course, many of you have the virtual tours already at your websites. Now, the property owners. Now, we could talk about the owner of a hotel property, okay? They're certainly a customer for the hotel staff because, you know, the management company's customer is the hotel property owner. In the vacation home rental business, the vacation rental company, and those of you who are not familiar with it, if you're a traditional hotel today, you know, a lot of people think the owner owns a condo or a beach house and rents it out on VRBO, Vrbo, or Airbnb, but at least half of the inventory is managed through vacation rental agencies. So if you're one of the many vacation rental companies today, you know that we have two customers. We have the actual guest who pays the money to stay there, and we have the property owners that actually own the places that we actually is our customer too, because if we don't have properties, we don't have anything to rent. So these are actual customers who are economically important. But I want you to think also even bigger than an economic relationship is our internal customers, okay? You may have heard this term before, maybe the first time you're hearing it, but your customers every day are not just the people that pay to stay there or own your properties. It's your coworkers. It's your coworkers from your same department. It's your colleagues from other departments. And in fact, it is your vendor partners. When I say vendor partners, those key suppliers, maybe not a random vendor that comes to provide a one-time service or to fix something, but the vendor partners that you use every day. Some of you have outsourced housekeeping functions. Some of you have outsourced, most of you have outsourced at least key maintenance and engineering functions. So you've got that air conditioning or heating specialist, the elevator people. I'm pretty sure most of you do not employ an elevator specialist when the elevator is out, that you need someone to come and fix that elevator, especially if you're one of our high-rise buildings today. So, and there's so many more, you know, it's the copywriter for your marketing team. It is, in many cases today, people have outsourced the function of revenue management. People have outsourced the function of call center, which we should give a shout out to Travel Outlook today, one of our sponsors. So why are they important? Because this is a complex business and it's extremely simple conceptually, but it's really hard to do well. Think of all of the moving parts. We talked about this in the last webcast in the guest cycle of service, and we all have to pull together when we talked about the tricycle of guest service. So to me, hospitality, the core of hospitality is bigger than guest service, because we have to provide it for our internal customers, because you can't simply flip on the light of hospitality like you turn on a flashlight. You know, you can't be out in the, what we say, front of the house, you know, in the lobbies, in the corridors, in the public areas, driving the logo wrapped vehicles. We can't just pass a real paying economical guest and say, oh, hello, how are you? Welcome. And then, you know, in the back room, we're having an argument. You can't be in the kitchen and back with the line cook and, you know, the prep cook, and then having a big argument about something, and then you walk out, oh, hello, how are you? Welcome to, would you like to be seated? The vibe cannot flip that quickly. So it really starts foundationally and with our coworkers, our internal customers. The flame of the hospitality experience is reignited every day at the employee entrance. Now, I say that if you work in a traditional hotel resort, you probably enter an actual employee entrance. But of course, many of you are destination resorts and you go straight to the pool, or you go straight to the laundry room, or you go straight to the marketing office somewhere off-site, or many of you actually work off-site and you work remotely. So you may not actually enter the employee entrance, but when you log into your system and you start appearing on the Zoom room, in the Zoom room, if you use that, if you work remotely. But every day when you have your first interaction, that's where you reignite that spirit of hospitality. So Customer hospitality should be foundational to your company culture, okay? And this requires building a team that is committed to working with one another instead of a collection of staff members who happen to work in the same building or get a paycheck deposited from the same organization. When you have that true commitment to one another, that's what starts the spirit of hospitality. Not only to complete all those steps in the cycle of customer service that we talked about, which is important that we all have to come together, but to deliver it all with the spirit of hospitality. Because without hospitality, the lodging business is pretty much a commodity. You know, if you put a blindfold on a guest and you drove them to your hotel or your property and you take that blindfold off while they're in the accommodation, they're probably not going to know where they're at, what brand they're actually staying with, because chances are pretty good the decor is very similar. With revenue management today, chances are pretty good the price is pretty similar, and chances are also pretty good the amenities are pretty similar. It is the people who make the difference and the experiences that make the difference. And that all starts with how we have a commitment to each other to make it happen. Through hurricanes and ice storms and pandemics, what else? Any other kind of disruptions? Oh yes, tornadoes. I hate to mention all those bad things, but the true commitment that we have to one another to make it all happen for our guests. So customer hospitality should be foundational. Here are now some tips for making it foundational. First of all, it starts with the interviewing and the onboarding process. Do we do peer interviewing? I love this concept. You know, sometimes the HR person or some companies, the external HR screener finds the candidate and then they send them over to usually the director or the department head to do the interviewing, and then they're either hired or they're not. But you think about who's going to actually spend the most time with this new person. I love companies that do peer interviewing. So when you do the interview, you have the leader interview them, and then you have a few of the peers join in and see what that vibe is. How does the person get along with the individuals they're going to be seated next to, standing next to, or on email and chat with all day long? I'm a huge advocate of thank you notes. I think if you're interviewing, you should always send a thank you note. And thank you for your time. First of all, it's the right thing to do. Secondly, it does help build your brand, you know, and even if they don't pick you or hire you this time, it's going to make an impression and you will stand out, either that they may keep you in mind for next time, or when they move on to a different company and years later your paths cross again, they will remember you. I will also say this, companies, we all as an industry need to do a better job. When people are not selected for the position, let them know. You know, at least send them an email, maybe send them a letter, or even call them, especially if they've come back for a second, third interview, or they come online for virtual interviews. Let's give the dignity of closure to someone when they weren't selected. Once again, to protect your brand, you know, maybe you select someone else and maybe that person doesn't work out and you got to go to the number 2 or the number 3 choice. But also, it's the right thing to do. Now, first day on the job, how do we treat people? You know, I have many examples where I talk to people about their first day on the job. I think of my son, Adam. He's had quite a few jobs being a young person starting out. After community college, he's worked quite a few jobs actually. Finally found a really good place. He works for Verizon right now in sales. But so many of the times, the first day on the job, you know, as a parent, I try not to be too involved, to be that helicopter parent. But, you know, when he's 21, 22, 23, he's 25 now, Dad still wants to know, how did your first day go? So many times I hear like, pretty good. Well, did you meet your coworker? Yeah, I met him. You know, did anyone take you to lunch? No. That is really how we set and how we welcome people. Here at KTN, Kathy Cook sends out a get to know you form. We find out what is your favorite food? What kind of music do you like? what's your dream vacation? And, you know, we find out, and maybe you make it fun. If you were a superhero, what superhero would you be? We don't do that, but you could. But you use all that and then you send that out. People actually get to know their new hires in a deeper and more meaningful way. So that's where it also starts. Now, much of hospitality is actually philosophical. It's not just the guest service, but we can demonstrate it. But the philosophies really are kindness, patience, respect, compassion. Compassion means we can understand how you feel. You know, we don't have to actually necessarily feel what you feel and have that true empathy where we feel what you're going through, but we have compassion that if you have a you know, something going on in your home life, you have an elderly parent or a sick child, or you're going through planning a wedding, or maybe you're going through planning a divorce, that we have compassion and support for others and make that teamwork come together. And when things come up for people, that we cover for one another. That's the start of customer hospitality. But it's also demonstrative. It's what we do every single day. Do we lift others up when we see them? Do we say, hey, Douglas, looking good there today? You know, that'll do it for me. Thank you. Yeah, I just got this blazer from Macy's. Thank you. Do we, you know, if you're a woman, I love how women compliment other women. I love your earrings. I love your hair. Give others credit when things go well, then instead of taking credit yourself. I love peer-to-peer recognition programs. Catch me at my best. Or you could do a shout out program where you say, hey, Chris over here, they really came through for me. You know, I was late for work because my car broke down and they stayed late. Or I had a guest with this really terrible problem. They had someone in their party that had a special need, and Chris from maintenance, they built a little ramp to make this accommodation more accessible for someone so they didn't have to go upstairs. I love to see where people give recognition for others when things go well, but they accept personal responsibility when things fail. Now, I don't know if we have any NBA fans out there. If you do, maybe you love your team. I love my Miami Heat. If you do know NBA, Erik Spoelstra is one of the most recognized coaches. He's always up for Coach of the Year, NBA Coach of the Year. He actually was the assistant coach, only to Steve Kerr, for the U.S. Olympic team. The last two games, not the last game, but the game before, Erik Spoelstra drove up an amazing play, and we were the underdogs because we had a poor record, but we beat the Minnesota Timberwolves. I'm sorry if we have any Minnesotians here, but we beat them on a last second play. He drew up this amazing sneak play. They thought we were going to throw it to our guy, Tyler Hero, that has scored all the points that night, but we snuck in the back, and Nikola Jovic threw that slam dunk in. And he, at the post-game interview, he said, it was all Nico. It wasn't me. He had to execute. The very last game, we're playing Detroit. The game was 1.3 seconds left. Detroit, it was already the end of overtime. Detroit got a basket. We had 1 second left, 1.1 seconds left on the clock, and it was tied. So had nothing happened, it would have gone into a second overtime. But Erik Spoelstra went out there on the floor and he called timeout, except there's one problem. They didn't have timeouts. And when you call timeout and there's no timeouts left, the other team gets a free throw and the other team put a shot in at the free throw line and won that game. And, you know, all the players were like, it wasn't Spo's fault. It wasn't his fault. It was a crazy moment. But he, at that conference, he said, this loss is on me. And I love that about Coach Spo. So, you know, when things go well, remember, you didn't do it on your own. Your team did it. Give them credit. But when things fail and you're the leader, take responsibility. That's how we show hospitality. Now, I just encountered this week. I added some content for you this morning when I came in about a really new concept that was new to me, and I love this. I'm actually going to write about it probably for my next training article. They're called micro encounters. Micro encounters are our opportunity every day to demonstrate the philosophy of hospitality. Now, I'm going to be writing about micro encounters with our guests, but today I'm going to share with you micro encounters in the workplace, which is what the article is on. I actually found this in Chief Executive. Micro interactions is what they call it. If you Google search Chief Executive micro interactions, you can read the white paper on this. But micro interactions, according to Chief Executive, refer to the daily subtle exchanges between our colleagues, managers, and staff, okay? And I love this quote: whether it's a quick conversation in the hallway or a brief check-in before a meeting, these seemingly minor interactions carry the weight of the company's culture. And so that's when we actually talk to people and say, hey, how you doing today, Doug? I'm good. I can tell you're actually not good. What's going on? Well, actually, something's happened at home. My pet is sick. My teenager's mad at me. I've had all of these things. Well, you know what? We're going to talk later. Or I got you. I've been there. I've done that. Or by the way, Doug, when I checked on you last week, you had that issue at home. What's going on? Those are the things that are important. We said earlier, looking good today. I like your new hairstyle. Notice you got a haircut. Is that a new ring? Or Kennedy, your Heat won last night. Yes. These subtle interactions, micro interactions, are everything about company culture. It's not just what we do at the annual meeting when we give out an award. It's not the annual bonus. It's not the stand-up meeting once a day, once a week. But you have two choices every single day when you come to work. And these micro encounters are a great way to demonstrate the philosophy of customer hospitality. When you come to work every day, you can let the random personalities of others have a negative effect on your emotional well-being. And we can be victimized by those we encounter every day. Or we can make it our choice to have a positive affect on the emotions of those you encounter. I love this quote here: be the change you want to see in others. I borrowed this from those who have borrowed it from others who have borrowed it from others. I think the original source of this may have been the Dalai Lama. Be the change you want to see in everyone else. If you think none of this applies to your workplace because it's just not one of those places, be the change that starts it. Remember the match image I had a minute ago with all the red matches with their sulfur right there? They're ready to be ignited. Sometimes it just takes that spark to lift everybody else up. And so make it your job, because I want you to think about this: how to be fully present. Sorry, I'm going to give you some ways to do this first, and then I want to have another concept for you. But be the change you want to see in others. How do we do this? How do you spark light that match that sets off all the others in the whole box? Be present. The hardest thing to give others these days is your full and undivided attention. To be truly present, not just say, how are you? Good, that's good, and move on down the line. Actually be present. I was out to dinner actually with my son, Adam. I was visiting him and his wife in St. Louis earlier this week. We went out to dinner at their favorite restaurant. Place is packed even on a Wednesday night. There must have been 50 people waiting for a table. And we're sitting there looking in. It was kind of cold outside, so we're all packed in this little entrance area. Every single person was on their phone. And I'm not just talking about, you know, the Gen Zs or the millennials or the Gen Xers. There was like a young kid over here, and right next to her, you know, an 80-something baby boomer, actually probably the great generation. They're all on their phones, okay? Now, I guess maybe I would have been one of them sometimes because we're all guilty of this, but I was making advantage of the quality time I had with my son and his wife because they live in another state. But it's kind of sad when you think about it. We sit there with our loved ones, and then you look around. This was waiting for a table, but then even when you're seated at a restaurant, you see a lot of people sitting there with their loved ones. Well, you know, we get addicted to this scrolling, okay? And we'd like to once again blame TikTok and the Gen Zs, but a lot of us, people in my age group even, those reels on Facebook get us scrolling again and again. And that changes the way our brain works and it reduces our attention span. And it's almost like a sugar addiction or an alcohol addiction or a drug addiction or a nicotine addiction. And we wanted more and more and more of that dopamine. And it's so hard to shut that off and just be fully present. The hardest thing to give someone is your attention. So when you have those micro interactions, the micro encounters with your coworkers, with your guests, with your vendor partners, be fully present. Hold the eye contact a little bit longer and actually make that connection. When you get to about the third second of eye contact, the smile breaks out. The smile is a natural reaction to eye contact if you hold it long enough. It's more contagious than the coronavirus, and it has physical benefits for everyone. When you share that smile with someone, they're going to pass it on to someone else. It lights that vibe, it fires up that hospitality vibe, and they're going to pass it on just like, you know, if you sneeze and touch a doorknob, you could pass on something bad, a cold, the flu, or corona, but you can just as easily share a smile and eye contact, and that vibe transcends humanity, and it gets passed on as well, okay? Listen attentively, make sure to show that you're fully present with the eye contact, smile, that you actually restate something specific to let them know you get it, and ask the follow-up question. The follow-up question really gets people talking. We talk about this a lot with our guest hospitality webcasts, but it's the same thing with your coworkers. Truly check in with them. Hey, how was your weekend? Oh, it was good. Good, what'd you do? Oh, we drove to a nearby town to see fall colors. Oh, you did? You drove, so you saw some fall colors? And then you're gonna get the real story. Actually, yes, and it was my wife's birthday, and you know, so we celebrated. We found this beautiful spot. We took a hike near a creek, and then we found this really cool store, and we went to this little hole-in-the-wall restaurant. How much time does it really take? 30 seconds, 45 seconds to be present and make that connection, to be there for someone else. Now, I threw this one in for us because, you know, a lot of us spend more time emailing people than talking to people, or if you have intra-company chat, some kind of, you know, text message on Teams, or many different ways you can do that. Remember a few tips. Don't CC others to point out shortcomings. Don't try to make people look bad. It will come back to you. It destroys teamwork. It just destroys our esprit de corps. Pick up the phone when you read those adversarial remarks, and when the email exchange starts to take that wrong turn. We've probably all had this happen. When you call someone that you're having a bad textual exchange, whether through chat or email, and you actually call them up, that wasn't the intention, or it humanizes it. Maybe that was an ill intention, but you flip the direction of this interaction when you actually talk to people. And then if you have to email out bad news that you lost a client at 4:55 p.m., do we really have to tell everyone? Let's maybe wait till 9 a.m. or send it, but you know how you can schedule the email to go out later these days. I want you all to think about as we start to wrap up here. I know we talked about this a lot, but I don't know how many of you have actually done this exercise. You've got to be here 40 hours a week at least. And if you're an exempt salaried manager, you're laughing right now because it's more like 45, 50, and in season 55, 60. But for our non-exempt hourly workers, you got to be here 40 hours. Think about how much time you actually have. You know, we all have one thing in common. We start every day with 24 hours. At 12:01 a.m., we have 24 hours. And if it's 12:01 a.m. Monday morning, we have 7 days. We have 168 hours. We like to sleep 8 hours. We would like to sleep 8 hours a night. Again, some of you may be laughing at this if you have children or a long commute. But ideally, then we have, if you take away sleep, it's 112 awake hours. Think about your commute time. If you live in a city, it's probably at least 30 minutes. And if you live in if you work at a destination resort, chances are where the vacation area where you work, there's no affordable housing. It might be even more than in a big city just because of the distance. It might easily be an hour each way. An hour each way, that's 2 hours a day. That's 10 hours a week. Errands. Do you have to do chores? Do you have to get groceries? Do you have to drop off the dry cleaning? Do you have to pick up childcare? I think childcare is the next one. Oh, we didn't have childcare on here. I think it's coming up. Household chores. You know, maybe you have a housekeeper. Good for you. But a lot of us, even if we can afford a housekeeper, we prefer not to have one because we like things to be just so. But taking care of cutting your grass, taking care of the dusting, there we go. Childcare, pet care, elderly care, driving your mom or dad to their dialysis, dropping your kid off at ballet or soccer or cheer or baseball, taking care of the pets for their annual or their monthly grooming or their annual vaccination. Second job, you know, in today's world, the realities is we probably even, many of us need that second job to make ends meet, especially at the holidays. We don't want to go in debt. So I want you all to think about how much time is left. And when you start to become aware of time, you realize it goes really quick. Here we are, the 2024 is on its actually, I was trying to find an image where there was less sand up here and more here, because this year is almost toast. We have about 6 weeks left. What that means is that the 2020s are more than half over. We got 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. We're almost halfway through the 2020s. Remember when the 2020s started? That was the pandemic. Seemed like just yesterday. The time goes quick. So remember, when you're here, when you're at work, live in the spirit of hospitality. Not only with your guests and those who pay us, not only with travel agents and third parties and meeting planners and property owners, but with your internal customers. That's where the vibe of hospitality starts. Now, I'm going to conclude today with something else I added just this morning. For years now, as I travel around and I do talk to people, and you know, if I actually meet somebody at a reception or a social event, or you know, maybe when I talk to people and they're waiting to board or on board an airplane, and they say, so what do you do? Oh, I have a training company. What? Yeah, I train people to work in hotels and hospitality. They always say, so what do you train them on? And I say, well, you know, I teach sales and I teach hospitality. They're like, hospitality? I've had more than one person say, oh, so Doug, basically you teach fluff, like smile, eye contact, facial expressions, being polite. You know, and a lot of times I took that as an insult. If you actually look in the dictionary, Merriam-Webster, the third definition here, something inconsequential, fake, not important. Because the real important thing is that room key, right? Or the key code, or the hot meal, or the actual massage at a spa, yeah? Or the drink you serve at the pool, yeah? That's the real thing, right? The rest is fluff. And you know, I took that as an insult. If you look at a dictionary.com, fluff, again, number 3, something of no consequence. People who think that about my job, but I have spent 35 years, 70 days of training a year, which involves 2 nights on the road per training day. That's 140 days out of 365. I have spent 1/3 of my adult life teaching fluff. I'm gone 1/3 of every year teaching fluff. But you know what? I'm proud of that. And you know what? I'm happy about that. Because really, finally, only recently, I realized hospitality is fluff. Yeah, let's embrace the fluff, ladies and gentlemen, because you know, the fluff is what it's all about. When you think about fluff, what's the first thing you think about? A lot of us think of s'mores. What makes the experience of eating s'mores around a campfire memorable? It's the fluff. What makes the sandwich in a school lunchbox tasty that everybody wants to trade with you? It's the fluff. What makes a pillow on a warm bed when you're super tired so inviting? It's the fluff. What makes that down coat you put on in the winter snuggly warm? Fluff. a mug of hot chocolate on Christmas morning after you unwrap the presents. Fluff. Think about it. What causes your guests to come back the next time? It's not the room. It's not the amenities. It's not the rate. It's the fluff. What makes your vendors come through during extreme emergencies? Hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, weather events, or when it's a heat wave and everybody in the town's air conditioning is out, they come to you first because of the fluff. What makes your staff committed to each other? What makes you do the 6th day, to do the double shift, to come in early, to stay late? It's not the paycheck. You can get a paycheck somewhere else. It's the fluff. Ladies and gentlemen, indeed, hospitality is fluff. So after 35 years and someone says, what do you do? I'm going to be like, I'm a trainer. What do you train them on? Fluff. Because the fluff brings them back. So I hope you've enjoyed us today. Our shout out to all of you around the world. Customer hospitality is bigger than guest service. And a few reminders, join us next month. We'll be doing our Reservation Sales Quest 2025 edition, brand new and updated content. And then join me in January. We're going to talk about how to be a lightning rod to truly ground negative vibes. And if you know what a lightning rod is, I'm sure, but you may not know what it does. Well, we're going to talk about that. Shout outs, a couple more things. Our podcast, all of our webcasts here are distributed on YouTube as webcast, but also on podcast, including on Spotify, Castbox. You can find our monthly video training tips at our YouTube channel, as well as more recently, YouTube Shorts, which are fun for your pre-shift stand-ups. Reach out for any of our services. I'm going to go through these. I'm not going to go through these today in the interest of time. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to Travel Outlook. Thank you to Track, TravelNet Solution. We appreciate all of you joining us. The fluff brings them back, and I hope today's fluff brings you back. Thank you again.